the top is that young consumers are starting to miss payments, right? We're seeing, what it was that Equifax said, found that 28% of homeowners, 1.4 million consumers missed a credit card payment in the first quarter of this year. And that's an increase of 146,000 from last year.
Yeah. So Q1, 10% of young, and I don't know the stat for what defines a young person, missed a credit card payment. I mean, I don't know if we should be freaking out about this, but if it continues, maybe we should be freaking out about it. 1 month of missing a credit card payment is not going to tank your credit score, but if you're consistent with that, it certainly will. I don't think that means that we're taking a nosedive with the economy, but I think that there's a potential nosedive on the horizon.
It's possible. I mean, just to put it in context, in Q1 of 2025, approximately 24 out of every 10,000 Canadians were over 90 days late on their credit card payments, which is a rise in financial stress among consumers in Canada. But I don't think 24 out of 10,000 is necessarily that notable.
I don't
going
think
from 16 out of 10,000 to 24 out of 10,000. Like it's in the, you're telling me there's a chance.
What's all this 1 in a million talk, Sean?
I mean, it's not quite that, but it's, it is a fairly small group of people that are, 90 days delinquent on payments and in serious trouble. Certainly people are missing credit card payments right now.
90 days is significant. Missing one payment or late on one payment, not the end of the world, but 90 days, you're getting yourself into trouble. If we talk about the dream of home ownership amongst young people, this narrative would certainly support the freak out if you're that younger generation. There's ways around it.
We're also seeing young people are most affected. They've got the least amount of discretionary spending. They've got the least amount of nest egg to kind of, to kind of try to be back on. So, I think it's a combination of wages haven't necessarily grown that much. We've had, and it's certainly an increase in the cost of living. Wages haven't gone up, higher mortgage renewal rates, and people are just cutting back their discretionary spending. So it becomes a feedback loop, right? It's like, well, I don't have a lot of money. I'm not going to be putting that into, I'm not maybe going to go out for dinner, or I'm not going to buy something that I want. And then that turns into businesses feeling the pressure. So maybe they don't hire as much, or maybe they don't they don't increase wages, or they don't invest in a certain machinery or thing that they need. And then that further slows the economic expansion, which
ripple effect
it's a classic vicious cycle.
We're watching it right now in the housing market, where you have a slowdown that lasts more than 6 months. We're like on year 3 of the slowdown, and it gets perpetual eventually. That people's mindset changes. They invest in other places. We're feeling the effects from it now. But it always seems to, some black swan event seems to come and turn around and whip it all back into shape on the other end of it. So for me, there's no long-term panic, but short-term impacts can have long-term results.
It does happen it can happen all at once too, right? Like we're seeing, yes, it's 24 out of 10,000. That's not that many, but there are people that are doing less with less. Like they don't have a lot of money. This can start to spiral. I don't think we're on that breaking point yet, but in the housing economy, we've seen people really not making investments in housing as they were a couple of years ago. And I actually just want to point out that we had a comment on one of our videos last week. I don't know if you saw it, but basically saying like, hey, you guys are trying to stir up fear of the market, and the music stopped. Everybody's gone home. Like, the housing market is dead, basically. I think that's exactly what we're trying to do. But I think, it's a good point. Like the housing market is a lot slower. What do you think What do you think has to happen for the housing market to come back?
I guess, are we talking about the condo market? Like, it may be worthwhile to specify, because we have looked at, as you zoom out, you're like, oh, the housing market, nothing's moving. And it's like, well, that's not really true. The condo market, nothing's moving in the smaller condo space. I mean, I think it's a great time to dive in, but your financials have to be in order. Your own personal confidence and risk tolerance is going to, write that headline. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, I bought a condo. I was able to save up because I was living at home with my parents. And we're seeing a lot of that, like a lot of kids, young adults staying with their parents longer. So be responsible, take that as an opportunity. When the kids are freaking out that they're not going to be able to, purchase a home or condo or whatever, get into a property and grow their money. Be wise about the opportunities that you have. Don't sit at home in your parents' basement, kicking yourself or trying to beat up on the older generations for buying up all the property. Save your money, get a job, be responsible, and you'll have those same opportunities as my buddy.
Well, I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because I think that people think, oh, I've heard that young people can't buy and I can't do it then. And rather than actually looking at the details, a lot of people are more qualified than they think when I speak to them. It used to be that I would talk to people and they'd be like, oh, I want to buy I want to buy a 2-bedroom condo in Toronto. And that was my red flag for this person has no idea what they're talking about, because everybody wants a 2-bedroom condo. One, there's none of them in Toronto. They're all huge. And two, they're well above what somebody would typically spend on a single unit. It's not like, it's $800,000. And for one person to do that, it doesn't make sense. But now what I'm finding is that people are coming to me and like, hey, I've been sitting on all this money. I've been saving. I've got a great job. I just want to see, just for giggles, what is it that I could actually afford? I'm finding that people are surprised by how much they can afford now. They can actually afford more than what they were thinking. And so that idea that nobody can buy, it's not possible, that is not true. There are people that are very well qualified, whether or not they want to buy or not. That's the second piece.
Sure. And in that condo market, like that's where we're really seeing a drop in prices, right? Like, let's say 3 years ago, I think I would estimate 3 years ago, the lowest price point you could get into the condo market was like, let's say 520, 550. Now we're seeing stuff in the mid to high fours, right? So like the condo market has contributed a lot to the headlines, but it's also now sort of the place of opportunity. I mean, if Benjamin Tall was right when last time we heard him speak last year, he said, like, look, 5 years from now, the condo market is going to be the hottest thing. So at what point do you want to jump in if you're, sitting on the fence, or if you think that you can time the market? What are you waiting for?
Yeah. But that's hard for people to jump in and just think, oh, I'm just going to go in. I'm going
to be the first, right?
When the evidence isn't there, it's hard to just jump in and be like, oh yeah, for sure, I'm going to jump into the market, and this is, I'm going to believe that it will always go up and it's going to be more and it's going to be worth more in 5 years. When the evidence before was, hey, last year this was worth 500, this year it's worth 550. The year before that, 3 years ago, it was worth 300,000 or 350. You can see that trend happening. But when it's going the opposite direction, it's hard to look at the 40-year trend and say, well, 40 years ago, this would have been worth $20,000 and today it's worth 500. That's a hard thing to like wrap your mind around when it's like, well, I don't know where I'm going to live in 5 years. Will I want to be here? Will I have a family? It's hard for people to like put essentially all their chips in the middle and jump into something where like, I'm hoping that it goes up.